Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of our Alumni Insight series. Today, we are joined by Angela Triplett, class of 2006, and we are thrilled to be having a conversation around the work that she is doing to increase the number of women and members of the LGBTQI+ community in her company, but also in the industry. So, Angela, it's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate it.
Well, we are very much looking forward to this conversation. And, it's not every day that I get to chat with someone who works in the space industry. So I probably can't use the term "it's not rocket science," because in this case, it really is. And you're doing some really phenomenal work that we'll get into a little bit later. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Of course. Yeah, I'm excited.
So to start us off, can you just tell us a little bit about your current role, your responsibilities, and how you got to this position?
Sure. So I work at the Aerospace Corporation, and it always gets people when they say, okay, who do you work for? I go, oh, the Aerospace Corporation. They go, oh, which one? And then you get to go through the history. And I will say that the history of the Aerospace Corporation is probably the most intriguing thing about my role and how my day-to-day activities. We are a federally funded research center, so FFRDC. And what my particular role is in comparison to the entire company's role, our company was made to provide mission assurance for military and government missions. And with that, we have kind of a umbrelling, trying to say this again, the right words, the dual partisan or nonpartisan. We don't care. We just want the mission to be successful.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of non-disclosure agreements. We work with everybody. We're the one that brings all the information. We're the history of space. We're the history of a lot of the new developments in science for aerospace, all those things. So that's kind of like the background of what I think is so cool about our company. In my particular role, I actually switched positions last May, so mid-pandemic. Yay!
What a time to switch positions.
Right. They still ask me. They go, so where's your office? Well, I'm not sure where it's going to be. But my current role right now is I'm a senior project engineer, and what that means is I'm kind of the interface between our government partners or our customers and their contractors.
Okay.
So our contractors, our customers look at us and they want to make sure that everything is hunky-dory. Mm-hmm. They have assurance. And so at Aerospace, we have this wonderful ETG team, engineering technology group, that are kind of the basis of all of our technical knowledge. We hold the history, everything. They're the guys that do the grunt work.
Yeah. Okay.
So we interface with them, and my role is to basically take any concern or any review and help my ETG team be able to make a proper assessment. And I came into aerospace. This is where the rocket scientist, I always say, no, I'm not. But I guess when you break it down,
in layman's terms, it's probably a good connection to make, right, initially, before you start to explain all the detailed work that you do.
Yeah. So I came. My first job out of grad school, after being a visiting professor at Carnegie, it was working with a lot of ordnance devices and creating test fixtures for laboratories. And through that, I had a lot of ordnance. When I say ordnance, I said, think of it as explosives. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the aerospace industry, it's explosives with finesse.
Okay.
And one of my mentors, she used that word. She goes, think of it, but with finesse. We want to hit it just hard enough, which instead of a lot of other applications, like give it all you got, let's go.
Right.
So I came into aerospace with an ordnance background. So I was an ordnance expert. And with that, I touch on everything for integration. So integrating the launch vehicle to the space vehicle or the satellite.
Uh-huh.
And then when those release, it's a very, as I say, finesse. It's a very, tight niche, has to happen hard enough, but very soft.
Yeah, probably
So
just the right amount of force, right?
just
In
the
order
right
to make
amount of
sure that
force.
things don't go in the wrong direction.
Right. So through that, I had a wonderful mentor. And this kind of brings me into women in ordnance, women in mechanical engineering in general, is, very difficult to find. Women in ordnance, very even more. And I was lucky enough to have a mentor that she started out in the 1950s, 1960s, making her stand.
So she was probably one of a very, very few who were pioneers in the industry.
Very much so. Very much so. So now it's kind of fun where, that I came in as being part of the ATG team, being in charge of all ordnance on all launch vehicles, and then the manager for all the mechanisms. So anything that's activated by motor, rotor, spring, it goes on the launch vehicles. My group that I managed was in charge of that.
Okay.
And now I'm actually working directly with our customer and SpaceX on their launch vehicles. And I focus on the fairing, so what encapsulates the satellite, the separation mechanism, so anything with integrating the satellite and the launch vehicle, and then all the fun little ordnance that they say we don't have ordnance, but you do. It's been a fun ride.
I bet. Wow. And I'd love to touch on kind of the SpaceX part a little later, because there has been so much hype and in the media of some of these recent explorations that would love to get your thoughts on that in a bit. But, coming back to, not only your mentor who was in the, 50s, 60s, but even through your experience, I could imagine going into a male dominated field, there were some challenges and some hurdles that you had to overcome. Can you talk a little bit about what were some of those and how you persisted through those?
Sure. So as you said, I'm in a very male dominated field. I went to Wooster, graduated with physics. And to be honest, there's more females in physics than when I switched to mechanical engineering. And you don't feel, at Wooster, you don't feel isolated. You don't feel, that you stand out. I went to grad school, and the first thing that I realized, I got a scholarship for being a white American female in mechanical engineering.
Oh, wow.
I was stunned. And that helped carry me through my master's and PhD. That was kind of the first indication. I was like, wow, this is something really special. And when you go into meetings and you're the only female, and I look at, my mentor that was also female, we always would tag team, because she also grew up, went to school, and she hits them hard. She hits them real hard. And I'm kind of let's pull it back, let's bring it down.
You've got that kind of tag team approach of, you'll be the kind of, more in your face a little bit, and I'll come in and finesse around the edges to, ultimately get what you want.
Yeah, good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
It's a great dynamic duo.
Yeah.
But yeah, so some of the challenges was definitely being the only female in the room, so that you had to speak up. And I like to consider myself a little introvert, but I'm quite shy. But I couldn't sit in the back of the room. I had to be up front. I had to make myself kind of known. But I also didn't want to be that loud. Oh, that's that girl back there. So it's very difficult. And I know a lot of females out there have that issue. We've all read articles about, people that are bosses, they are termed curse word, a witch, or just
it's that double
must be
standard,
that time of the month.
right? The double standard of if a man was doing the same thing, probably no notice of it. But you have to walk that fine line of also pushing yourself as someone who's a bit shy and introverted. How did you get yourself into that or create that ability to push yourself into that very uncomfortable space?
So the first thing was I had to set my priorities of what do I want? If I sit back and I'm just quiet, where will that get me?
Mm.
And yes, was it out of the comfort zone? But that's one thing I will admit that Wooster pushes you to go outside your comfort zone, right?
Mhm.
And I think that being instilled in me from that experience at Worcester and just realizing that's going to come into play again and again and again and again in your career and life.
Yeah.
So realizing unless I actually went out of my comfort zone a little bit, what's the worst that can happen? I voice my opinion. I get a little bit further. They notice me. So some of the issues I ran into was being able to have connections, be noticed. And when I graduated from Akron, I was trying to get a postdoc at the Idaho National Laboratories working with alternative energy. And I thought everything was going great, but all of a sudden it went radio silent. And that was frustrating. What was the reasoning? I found out later, of course, it was budget cuts, but besides the point, from that moment of realizing, oh, I just can't wait around, I started taking action, looking up people on LinkedIn, making connections in a network. I was lucky enough to have an advisor that had connections outside Ohio with different universities, outside of the country, in Italy, Ospienza and Rome, amazing. Those type of experiences actually built my confidence to continue to do that. The experience for me reaching out to the Carnegie Mellon folks, I really wanted to go there. So I just started searching online to find professors that resonated with me. Mm-hmm. And so those type of steps, I think, when you're female, if you're male, but when you're female, you really have to be proactive.
Yeah. And I was also going to ask, a lot of the way you're describing this, I know you were a student athlete at Wooster, and how might that have impacted, your experience, or how you thought about, continuing to push yourself through all of these moments?
Most definitely. So sports are hard, right? You have to have an athletic ability or practice hard, right? It takes, time management for one. You add on Wooster academics to that, your mind is just blown.
Right.
It really, from labs, hey, I can't make this practice, I got to go to labs, to while everybody else is celebrating on the bus after a big win, you're like, oh, got to finish this homework. Math class always start at 8 a.m. So really time management and being able to place my priorities appropriately. Mm-hmm. Did I miss out on a lot of probably fun parties? Yeah. But I gained a lot of things in addition. One of the things I think that sports really played into how I dealt with being approached with problems or situations, tough situations, mm-hmm. is taking that deep breath and very quickly playing what the possible outcomes are. I could go into a lot of different sports scenarios, but one of the big things is a fight. You're upset. Am I gonna, be hot-headed and just go at them head on, butt heads? Or do I go, okay, I'll make this comment and just show my frustration, mm-hmm. and I'll let it fly. If it happens again, we'll see where that takes me. Yeah. And those things has really, from being frustrated from certain comments, from being frustrated from not getting positions or having arguments during a meeting, how to diffuse situations is something that I really, really got from the sports.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's you know, I think everything that you're saying is really great information for, for our students to be thinking about, especially student athletes, but also, for our recent grads who are, just getting started out. And as you're talking about growing your network, being intentional about who you are reaching out to, where you want to work, right? Where you want to go, and actually finding those organizations or companies and really targeting and saying, I'm going to end up here. And here's, you approach it in a very liberal arts way, right? Of, diligent research, thinking critically, which is, I think, some great advice for our students and for our alumni to hear.
Most definitely. And I'll make this comment though. There was a student last year, because I'm so proud of her, because I had no idea this occurred, but apparently there was a photo of me up in Taylor, and she had learned about the Aerospace Corporation. And luckily, it aged me, but there was one professor, two are still there. One was on leave though, sabbatical. But she reached out to them and said, "Hey, you were here when she was here, right? I always wanted to work there. Can you contact her?" That case in point, like now she accepted a full-time position. She had an internship, and now she's working in a place she wanted to. My mind was blown that, holy crap, like take the initiative. It's maybe not always, it won't always work out exactly how you thought it would. But you're gonna find a path that you probably will enjoy, if not more, just as much.
Well, and what a great opportunity for you, not only for the Wooster connection, right, but also for you to be paying it forward and thinking about reaching back and helping others to get into the field and into aerospace, which is kind of where I'd like to take the conversation now, which is, every organization is trying to think about how they diversify their workforce and their teams, because of all the research that says, those teams are more productive, more creative, innovative, all of those great things. So can you share some of the specific initiatives that you've been involved with at Aerospace to help diversify and bring more women and members of the LGBTQIA community into the company?
Sure. So at Aerospace, many companies have these now. We have something called engineering resource groups. They've grown into different names, different acronyms throughout the years, but we have different groups. I think right now we have 8 groups that identify, when we say resource groups, it's a resource for the employees to connect. You have a common connection, and each one of these groups, there's a president, VP, it just, is normal, but we have direct connection with our D&I group, so diversity, equity, inclusion group, and our CEO and president.
Wow.
And that was huge. Previously, I think I can maybe quoted wrong with this. I think 2017 or 2016, we got a new president, CEO, Steve Isakowitz. And prior to that was a woman CEO, Dr. Wanda Watson. And we had made progress. We've had ERGs for a long time, but we made progress with, with Wanda, I call her. But when Steve came on, he really took charge. And side note, he is a Cleveland Browns fan, so it's so nice. He's
that's great. one more connection that you both share, right?
Right? It's awesome, except when we lose.
Right. Well, you share even in misery, there's good company, right? So.
Yep, very much so. But our conversations with him have just been phenomenal. Every month we hold a CEO ERG exchange. So we used to go in person and just chat about our issues. And each month, each ERG, either one ERG or 2 ERGs, gets to present their issues, their wants, needs, and their ideas on how to improve. So that's kind of how we worked internally to continue to grow and get our employees to feel safe, to feel appreciated. So one of the things, especially the last couple of years, 2020, Black Lives Matter, the LGBTQ issues, and now with the Asian community, the Pacific Asian and Asian community, all of that, our CEO has been hands-on, interacting. As soon as anything occurs, he's contacting our ERGs to say, what can we do?
Wow.
How are our employees feeling? And we're encouraged every month to hold meetings, to hold events, to bring everyone together so that there's not someone that feels isolated.
Mm-hmm.
This past month, we pushed through on getting pronouns. I've been pushing this since, I will say pre-2020, but we all know 2020 just got, very easy. But really with the pronouns, we switched over to Workday, and it was so neat that we got to answer questions from people that had no idea what pronouns meant.
Oh, wow.
And to be able to break it down, to be able to, for them to understand, they're like, what do you mean? He, she, they, them, ze, I don't understand that. And how do I ask? And it was very cool to us that we were able to engage with our CEO, engage with our technology department, and then all the other managers would contact us, the ERG, leadership board, to ask for guidance. So it's going to the source.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just, I've read a lot of materials around how some CEOs, presidents, those types of, leaders of organizations have made statements of support, which is wonderful, right? But if there's no action behind that, if they're not intentionally changing how the internal processes operate, they're not changing how they're reaching out to those individuals, it's met with just not as much enthusiasm or actual impact. But what you're describing is really not only just in words, but also in those actions. And it seems that your CEOs are so committed that they are carving time in order to make sure that these conversations continue to move forward.
Most definitely. And in order to, not only take care of our employees, our current employees, but to actually recruit them. So we have a great recruiting team that goes out to colleges and high schools. We're very big in STEM volunteering. And excuse me, the cool thing, again, with the ERGs, we get to have diversity conferences. So we create a list of conferences associated with the diversity ERGs.
Oh, wow.
And then we have a budget to go there.
And are these conferences that the audience is as high school students or college students that you are then going to kind of recruit from, or are they also young professionals?
Both.
Okay.
Or all of the above, I should say. So for the younger students, our ARG that I'm vice president of always does this, let's say I call it a conference, but it's called Models of Pride. And it's pretty big all over, but it's very big in California and LA, where they start kids as young as, I think, 12 or 13. And they invite them and their parents for the LGBTQ community. And we go there, and yes, we're recruiting, but we're also just wanting to provide them advice to show them, hey, there's companies that will accept you. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to go through life being like, oh, I'm never going to get a job. I have to keep everything hidden or just confused. And it's pretty cool. I will say that, to hit up the younger generations.
Well, and I can imagine that as you are thinking about, what are some of the future issues that could come up that you should anticipate, to be able to get some of that feedback from the younger generations to say, what are some things that we should be thinking about so that you're never losing touch of, what are some of the things that you should anticipate?
Yep, and that's kind of where the pronouns came from. We always, for the last, I think, 4 or 5 years, we've been always, I'll list a couple of conferences we've gone to, Out and Equal, Out for Undergrad. And my specialty, my favorite was Lesbians Who Tech.
Oh, cool.
That's more of a professional conference, so we have more fun, but they're all amazing.
So the high school students probably not going to the Lesbians Who Tech, conference.
Yeah. There was a great one held in New York, and then they're typically held in San Francisco. Last couple of ones were virtual, but the one where the pronouns came was Out and Equal, and it was college students, some high school, but mostly college students, and it was very eye-opening because we had to put in our pronouns, and this was about 2 or 3 years ago that I was like, oh, well, I know what this is. Yeah, I wrote it down, and meeting other people that had different pronouns and being in an environment that just felt comfortable. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, I just want to understand that. So then as we progress, that's how we were able to, as a company, be able to provide this to all of our employees, because we talked with the younger generation. We talked with the groups that know where they want to go, know how they want to be identified. And that's huge.
And then you and your organization normalize that so that when, these college students, are then in the workforce, it's a much more inclusive environment because you have done the work to make sure your organization is ready for when they get there. And I think that's such a really just, a cool thing that you're part of creating the history, which has got to feel great.
It really does. I will admit that when we get emails from managers that have been here for 20, 30 years, and they're like, I want to create this environment for my employees. Help me. It's like, I don't know who you are, but I know you're high up on the ladders. I'm going to help you.
Oh, that's great. How cool. Continuing along this line of, working with young people, I would just love to hear, what advice you might have for parents, for educators who are looking to encourage young women. I know that, there certainly has been a lot of initiatives and focus on STEM, and even in some cases, STEAM, of bringing the arts into STEM. But what advice might you give to educators or parents who are trying to encourage their daughters to think about this?
So I came up with my own ideas, and then I threw them by my dad, because I'm pretty proud of myself. Dad, I feel like you're proud of me. How did you do it? I have one sister, so he has 2 girls. So
Okay.
dad with 2 girls, we're both into, the science fields, and, how did you promote this too? And we came to the same conclusion. You want to give them the skill set. You want to try to show that. And in order to show it, give them the experience. So as a child, you don't really know what's out there. So in order to be able to understand and have ambition to seek outside the box of what may be out there, give them experiences, give them some skill set, teach them something, but then say, hey, there's these other ways you could use this skill. There's these other avenues or, careers that are out there. Reach out there, help them make that connection, and then embrace it with them. I don't know how many, let's say you're a parent and you love art and you could care less about motors, rotors, and gears. You love your child.
Right.
So if they want to go to, a competition or start building models of engines, I may not understand it, but hey, I know someone down the road that does. give him a call. Those type of exposures. You said STEM has been around. Get them to STEM programs. Growing up, we were in 4-H. My sister did Odyssey of the Mind for a while. Those type of programs that are just creating environments for the children. You're not funneling them into one direction. You're providing kind of a pathway for them to expand. So you have to lay that foundation for them and just embrace it.
I think that's, absolutely fantastic advice. This has been I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think that, our students and our alumni will as well. Kind of the last question, slightly switching gears to just think about, would love to get your perspective on the space exploration and innovation that is currently taking place, not only from the standpoint of, exploration of Mars and places we have not been, but also, kind of this SpaceX civilian thoughts of going up into space. Just wanted to get your thoughts and see what anything that you're working on that could be kind of cool to share.
Sure. So it's funny, when I joined aerospace, SpaceX was just coming about. I always loved NASA. I knew of JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory up in Pasadena area, Glendale area. But I never thought I could be that close to space and not work for the government, not work for NASA. And some of the cool things that I've gotten to see with SpaceX and where they're going is thinking outside the box. One of the things I get to work on was helping create guidelines or guidance for how we can reuse vehicles. And when I say reuse vehicles, reuse rockets.
So the ones, once they come back down, how you can, is there, this is just a question, is there a lot left when that happens that you can then reuse? I mean, assuming everything goes well and it slowly comes back down versus in a burst of flames, how much can you reuse?
Yeah, so 2/3 of the cost to build a rocket is into the engines and the booster itself. So
wow.
Being able to return that, you're already gaining a lot of money.
Yeah.
It all comes down to money, right? Resources of money.
Yep.
And what SpaceX has been able to push, it's not like the technology was not there. The technology's always been there, but the resources and the ambition to, hey, let's try to do this. I bet we can. And the means to be able to fail. And this is what I always love about SpaceX. 1950s, when we were trying to get to the moon, right? How many failures did we have? Probably a lot.
Yeah.
How many of those failures were given to the public?
Probably very few. Yeah, probably none.
The cool thing with SpaceX is it's public.
Yeah.
And so it's so energizing because now people see SpaceX going up. People see Virgin Galactic going up, Blue Origin, and it's creating it's like the race to the moon again. Mm-hmm. And so there's so much excitement. So many people are wanting to get engaged, and I think that's wonderful. We all know Elon Musk's main goal is to get to Mars, and how is he going to get there? It's genius. I need to have money. I need to be able to create a platform in order to build and have money to get my rocket and research to get my rocket to Mars. Okay, well, I'm going to work for do other missions or to build that. That's any business, right? It's amazing how he was able to create this and going to Mars. Like that's boggles my mind. Because as a kid,
go ahead. I was just going to say, and probably one of the greatest true tests of an entrepreneurial spirit, right? Because the risks are so incredibly great. Yeah. Not only just the risk of losing money, but risk of lives. And so there's got to be that incredible drive to say, we're still going to do it no matter what.
Yeah. And with Perseverance landing on Mars, I mean, if you haven't seen the video, go look at it. It's better than any video game you could ever imagine, and it's real. And that's the thing, like the folks in our lifetime, like we never got to experience that. Like, oh my goodness, we are doing something before. No man has been on there, or no person has been on there, and it's real. It is real. Whether or not they consider Pluto a planet, going to these different planets is possible. Maybe the technology isn't there currently, but we can get there. And that's what I think is so cool. And there's still a red Corvette race car, Tesla, flying around in space.
Well, and that technology that's developed impacts all other forms of life on Earth, right? I mean, we wouldn't have some of the technology we have now if it were not for space exploration decades ago, right? Yeah. And so that's the other piece of that. Not only do you get to explore something and do something that's never been done before, but you're also helping to create the technology that maybe in 10 years, who knows what it'll be used for.
100%. And it's not just within the United States. I know we've been chatting a lot with some of the international work that I've gotten to do, and it's hard for me to put words to it, because what we've been able to accomplish in the United States with SpaceX, with NASA, with Blue Origin, all the different aerospace companies, from the materials to how we regulate space. So we have the range safety, so the authorities pertaining to each launch site, and then we have FAA, Federal Aviation Compliance. I need to look up that acronym again. But they cover what's going above certain elevation.
Oh, wow.
And so we have, in the United States, like everyone has this, but one of the last projects I got to work on was helping out when commercial companies, such as we have in the United States, want to get into the field and launch and practice launching, and how to make that safe for the public. Those type of things that we don't even consider. The United States has already had the heartburn. They've already gone through that. And so we're able to help out other countries build that infrastructure so that they can grow too, and so that all over the world, we can build on aerospace.
Wow. That's so incredibly cool. Is there anything else, any other cool projects that you're thinking about, working about, that you'd want to give us some insight into?
One of the other ones that we're trying to get about, we're always promoting women, and one of the last projects I finished, I got to work with some folks from Japan, and through that, there was the guy that I worked with, he wanted to show how women were actually advancing in Japan. So he shot me this link, and I think you have the link and you can put it to the file later. But the idea, the Tokyo Olympics haven't occurred yet. But if you look back, they had this crazy idea to have a meteor shower or falling stars on demand. And that was supposed to be associated with, the opening or closing ceremonies. I can't remember, but he pointed me to this female that was in charge of this company. And it's, cute animation, but the concept is everyone's putting up small sats or CubeSats up in space. And the idea that she had was, or the company had, was to have these send little floating stars, the falling stars, through the atmosphere on a touch of a button. And it wouldn't just be giving debris through the atmosphere, it would actually be collecting information that we could use.
Wow.
Everything from weather to how signals are being transferred from satellite to satellite, stuff like that. So he posted that, and that was just all from us working some international groups and saying, hey, here's another woman, and here's something that maybe we should connect. And so he's actually promoted me to reach outside my box again and connect with her through LinkedIn and so forth. So that's kind of one of the cool things we get to do. And we are always partnering when we can with NASA. And I had a dream growing up with to work for NASA because that's all I knew. And now I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not working for NASA. I feel I'm working for something totally cooler because I'm not pigeonholed.
Right. Well, and when you were growing up, NASA was it, right? But now there are so many other opportunities for you, and where you're positioned. I mean, you have these phenomenal chances to affect, history, and be able to look back, gosh, in 50 years, you'll be on some, Netflix documentary exploring, how we got to where we are and where we're going. It's really, really neat. And we're super proud of you as a College of Wooster grad.
Thank you. I still, I have, I went to University of Akron, I went to College of Worcester, and I reach back because Worcester, basically, it was my platform that just, propelled me to have confidence. And I will always give back. And I love Worcester, and I am thankful for everything you guys were able to provide.
Well, that is phenomenal. Well, thank you so much, Angela, for sharing the work that you're doing, not only the cool kind of geeky science stuff that you're doing, but also, the real difficult work of creating inclusive spaces for underrepresented voices, and bringing them to the table, not only as professionals, but also thinking about the future of your industry and how you are raising up those voices. It's something that's has been a really great part of this conversation that we've been able to have today. And I thank you so much for making time for us. And we hope to see you soon back on campus, where you can interact with some of the students as well.
Most definitely. It was a pleasure. And I hope to be back in Worcester soon. It's as much as I don't miss the snow in April, I'm ready to see the campus and friendly faces again.
That's great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Angela. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Same here. Thanks, Tom.